So you've been producing since 2004 with your company, Parts and Labor. You've worked with an incredible number of directors who are now regarded as the best in independent American cinema, the new voices, Robert Eggers, Andrea Arnold, Ira Sachs, Kelly Reichardt, many more. Do you feel, I understand that your company now went through some restructuring, some things have changed. Can you sort of tell me where the journey is going? How are you doing things differently now? How this is all been shaped by the last few years?
Working with and also a lot of amazing actors have come through the films that we've worked on and have become stars in their own right, and also cinematographers who are amazing, who were able to. I'm not saying that our films established all of these people, but I was able to be a part of those movies that brought these people together, and I could see how they worked, and I mean, if you've seen the Lighthouse, even to be on set during those performances is a once in a lifetime experience, and that rubs off on you. You learn from those experiences. You learn from your mistakes. When it doesn't work, and at least you have, when it doesn't work, you have to look and into yourself and into what may have happened, so you can try to support it a little bit differently next time as a producer and make it work. The future for me as a producer in Parts and Labor, which is the company that I founded with Lars in 2004, even though we're no longer working together, that the ethos and the ambition of the company hasn't really changed. If anything, the industry has gone through a couple of major upheavals, which is part of the reason why I believe that Lars wanted to go his own path, and I respect that. What we're pursuing is I'm working with Josh Peters and Isaac Erickson. Isaac, who had been with the company from early days, but we're still as interested in telling stories. We're still looking deeper into story and how to innovate within the storytelling as ever, and to work with, directors who, whether they're seasoned auteurs or whether they're people that want to look that are directors who are making their second film or their first film at any age, and not really discriminate, as long as I feel a connection with that person and understand that we can work together, and I believe in the vision that they have for a story that I really am excited about. I guess if there's one defining change, is at Parts and Labor we rarely originated our own stories. We rarely originated our own material, so to speak. I think we've just been doing that now more, to the point of working with writers. And I mean, the great thing about, the big change for me is I'm living in Los Angeles now. There's a lot of writers in Los Angeles. There's a lot of great writers in Los Angeles. Those collaborations in the past 2 years for me have been enormously fulfilling. I love it. I love working in development and working through stories and working through concepts and understanding the context of the story, the specific details of the world that we're building, whether that's a realistic depiction of our world or it's a fantasy world. And so that has been for me personally as a producer, individually, has been the most fulfilling. And that's what we've probably spent, but it takes a long time, it takes years. It doesn't, if you're really developing a project, you can't count on it to come to you all in one flash. Sure. It has to be, sometimes you're going on a journey where you get lost and you need to refine the story or the new version of the story that's growing out of that process.
I mean, just now you were mentioning the Lighthouse and things that go wrong, but when you think of Eggers and The Witch, and then the new one. It feels like it's one of those things that just happen and that nothing can go wrong. It's like everything is coming out and everything fits so well in this ascension, sudden and just so bright. How was your experience on working with him on 2 films?
With Rob?
Yeah.
Well, both. I mean, the first part of your question about, which is a little more abstract, is that, yeah, when things go right, they feel inevitable.
Yeah.
You look back on it and you say, wow, that was always going to be this great.
Yeah.
And you attribute it to, wow, the people who were doing this saw this from the beginning. They were following this North Star of this finished version of the film. And I think that there's an aspect of that that's true, but you can never imagine the movie. The movie is in terms of what it specifically is, it becomes the outcome of years-long process. Ultimately, performances words that must live within inside of the bodies of the actors on screen, that have to, especially within Rob's worlds, you need to sort of abandon any reservations you have about perhaps the absurdities of what you're working on. And you need to allow yourself to be open to the strange, I'm trying to say for both movies, but both movies are a little bit different. Like for The Witch, like the extreme darkness, when you see the production design elements come together with the costume, come together with the performance, in those scenes, I don't know, did any of us imagine that? No, we set that in motion. When you're aiming at Rob pushed that forward, and it was the coming together of all the people that were working together and collaborating on it to really fulfill it. And that fulfillment was a product of mistakes, was a product of like happy discoveries, and was capturing of a moment. And we may have like gone back and done it over and over again to make sure that we were getting this take in such a way that it was going to fit within the edit and within the timings that Rob needed, and Rob would guide that. But what we were seeing, what was being revealed to us, was something that was beyond, I think, what many of us could have imagined. And the thing is, like, you have to be comfortable at pointing a camera at a bunny rabbit and knowing that bunny rabbit is going to be somehow scary when it shows up in a movie. Can you imagine the score that's playing over the scene? Possibly, possibly. But it's more of having faith that you will get there when it's completed, and so for what you can't imagine, you're believing it, and it is an act of faith. I think with the Lighthouse, that was it was extreme. The conditions in which we were filming were just unlike anything I've ever seen, and you are working with. It was easier to imagine because we had The Witch, and we also had. We could see what we were doing. Everyone could see what we were doing. It was the technical precision and expertise that the crew brought to it. From the production design to the moving the camera was amazing. To lighting, to the mise en scène, and then you have these performances that were just, astounding. Yeah. Just astounding.
And so, as you said, it's a series of events, and people come and people go. But as a producer, what's worse, having worked with someone and then having to pass on a new project from them, or having a filmmaker that you've worked with in the past, that you've built something with, and then they move on to another producer? How's the dynamic there for you in terms of how you foster these relationships?
You know, it's a fact of life. It's not like a relationship with a director is not like a relationship with a lover. It isn't someone that if you're in a monogamous relationship with that person and you want to be with them for the rest of your life and you're getting married because you made a movie, that is just not the case. When I was beginning as a producer, early days, the examples that I had to look to were like Good Machine and Killer Films, and I worked more at Killer but I've worked with both companies.
Mm-hmm.
And these were companies that had long-standing relationships with particular directors. The directors were dedicated to those companies. Like Ang Lee was dedicated to Good Machine. Todd Haynes is dedicated and will work with Christine on everything that he does. And those are preferences from the directors. So that when my expectation was that was just how it is. And that isn't how it is. And in fact, it for every director, it doesn't necessarily need to be. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that there's not you kind of may not want that. If you want to have different experiences with different producers and different types of movies and go do other things, but as a producer, you also want to be able to grow with those directors. You want to be able to take that next step. So in particular cases, if you're, breaking your back on a film as a producer, and you're not taking a fee because you're investing in this director's future. Mm-hmm. And then if that director continues on to go do something bigger, and they're not actually bringing you into that, or they're not making the effort to do that, yeah, it's incredibly painful. But then nowadays, for where I'm at as a producer, I'm not sure that I necessarily want to be on those films. Like, the financial reward of working on some of these projects may not be worth the film itself. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it isn't out of snobbery that I say that. It's like I'm not interested. If I don't know, like, I'm not going to cite specific examples and trash people's movies, but and I don't mean to. I mean, I don't want to come across as trashing because I don't think they're terrible films, but I also don't want to, I'm not right for every movie. I'm not you don't want me on every film. Okay. That there's certain topics that just don't interest me. If my eyes are glazing over.
What topics are some that really don't interest you?
Just exploitive violence. Things that are just empty inside. Mm-hmm. Projects that are simply transactional. Mm-hmm. Those are not interesting to me. I don't know. I can't find the reason of being for a movie, then I'm not interested in it. If it's, I wanted to have some relationship to human truth, mm-hmm. To the truth of our lives or history, okay. Or our futures.
And when some of your projects, obviously, as always, some connect with audience or with a particular moment in the cultural sphere. When they don't, or at least they don't to the extent that they become these huge things, what's your relationship to the critical reception of those films? Do you look and you try to understand in which way they resonated or didn't from what the critics are saying and the larger
sometimes critics are wrong, sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong when they like a movie. I don't read every review. Mm-hmm. It takes too long to read every review. I just don't have the time mm-hmm. to read every review. But I don't mind a bad review. You know, I don't mind talking to the critics who give me a bad review. Like, I'll give you an example, and I'm going to keep the film itself out of this, but like, Scott found us when he was writing for Village Voice back. This is like really, this dates me, but so does everything.
Wow, okay.
And he just fucking tore up a movie that we had produced, and we so cared about, and we believed in. And I thought his review was unfair. And so we're at the Independent Spirit Awards for another movie, and I saw Scott, and I said, you know, and I didn't really know him at this point. And I said, Scott, like, I'm Jay, you know, whatever, and produced this movie. And he said, oh, I hated that movie. And I so respected him for just being completely straightforward. And you know, I recognized then, as I do now, it's a conversation. It's a conversation between critics, and some have their like biases, and they have their ways of seeing the world, or they have their deadlines that they're trying to meet and fulfill in a festival, and they have like too little time, or they're spun out, or whatever, or sometimes they're really putting a lot of thought into it because they care about it. Whatever those conditions are, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of circumstances involved. There's a lot of ways in which people.
And of course, now Scott is on the other side with you. He's moved on to.
What's that?
Scott is on the other side of this with you.
Yeah. So it's. Yeah, and you know, I think that he's really enjoying that.
Yeah.
He seems to be. I've seen him a couple of times in Los Angeles, and he seems very happy. And anyway, but like, I appreciate being able to talk to people. Like, if I'm on a jury at a festival, I expect to talk to the filmmakers afterwards.
Of course.
You know, I don't make a decision as a juror and say, oh, I hope the filmmakers never see me. Mm-hmm. And if my film is being judged by a jury, I expect to talk to the jurors. I will approach them and say, well, what happened?
Sure.
And whether I won or not, you know. Mm-hmm. So I know, you understand, you learn. I'm not doing it so that I can like plot my revenge against somebody. But this is a discussion. This is a way in which we all feel and see and understand movies. And if you have a chance to talk with somebody who has given real thought and real discussion to a film that you've put so much time into, it's a tremendous benefit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily shape all your future decisions. It helps you understand one perspective. It helps you understand how that perspective developed that may seem so foreign to you at first.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of this, like of being in these places of exchange and in a way confrontation, now we are at the American Film Festival here in Wroclaw. How do you see these sort of events, smaller events, regional festivals? How, for you, for your business, is there like, how do you see them as how valuable are they? How instrumental are they? Is it just for that, getting a sense of talking to people, or strategically there's another role that for you they can play?
I think the people that overlook these smaller festivals are foolish. I think that you or quote smaller festivals because I think that this is where there's no pressure. The big different, I mean, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. The big difference between a festival like the American Film Festival in Wroclaw and, let's say, Berlin or Toronto or Cannes or Sundance is that people are able to talk with one another. You're just texting each other and you're like, let's get a coffee, which is what I just met Simon Pegg, and it was really great talking to him as a fan and somebody who really respects him. Just have a normal conversation. And I don't know what we're.
Have you seen the film?
I haven't seen it. No, I'm going to watch it here.
It's quite something.
Cool. It was, and Tori, who worked at Parts and Labor, helped produce it, I believe. And so but to have I don't know, I'm sure more people here. You know, it's been nice. I've been here for all of one day, and you can hear my jet lag in my voice. But the pleasure of being at these festivals is to meet filmmakers and to see films that can be truly amazing that don't ever travel to the U.S. But also to have some time to enjoy a new town, but do so with other filmmakers and people that aren't necessarily. I'm using Simon Pegg as an example, but there's also the different filmmakers here who I haven't seen. I don't see them in the U.S. because we live in different cities. Even people that live in Los Angeles or New York, if you live in those big cities, you don't necessarily see them. Their festivals are these sort of watering holes for creatively and otherwise for the community, for a community, and we have so few of these types of opportunities. And what differentiates these smaller festivals is that it isn't about the transactional nature of our industry, and that's a real relief, and it's really a pleasure.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.